Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
We talk so much about failure in dentistry to a problematic degree, right? Whether it's implants, whether it's a crown, we just too much focus on when things go wrong. You should totally be aware and mitigate risk factors, right? Don't do a crown on a tooth with someone who has rampant decay and eats Jolly Ranchers, but I think are just not trained to navigate the business world with practicality.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bruce B. Baird, and you're listening to the Productive Dentist Podcast. In this podcast, I will give you everything that I've learned over the last 40 years in dentistry, working with thousands of dentists. I'll tell you, it's not that my way is the only way. It's just one that has worked extremely well for me, and I'd love to share that with you, so you too can enjoy the choices and lifestyle that productivity allows. More time for things you love, increased pay, better team relationships, and lowered stress. Let's get into it with this week's episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Bruce Baird with the Productive Dentist Podcast, and I have a special guest with me today. One of my good friends, Dr. Paul Goodman, Dr. Nacho. Thank you, buddy, for being on with me today.
Thrilled to be here. Always love chatting with you, Bruce.
Hey, tell me a little bit. You're retiring from big meetings, and I've heard, and you're doing some other really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Dentist Job Connect, a bunch of different really cool things. But tell us a little bit about the meeting that's coming up in April.
Wait, but I want to say a couple of things. Thanks, Peter. Well, first, I know my people, the dentists, and they're the most literal brain people ever, because I knew that if I said I'm retiring ... from running big events, I knew my dentist people, they wouldn't read that second part. So now all over the country, people are asking my team, is Paul retiring? And I think that's so fun and I love it. But I'm only retiring from running big events. I've done my contributions for over a decade, and big events to me, are over 120-ish dentists, right? Where you have to get room blocks. And what I'm sharing is, while I'm happy to go to Productive Dentist or the Dental Success Summit, there's a lot of behind the scenes planning that most dentists don't know about, right? You know about it. And I am going to take a break from that. I'm going to refocus on some of our smaller, more intimate things. We do Super Dentist Boost Camp. You've been to that. During my retirement party on that Sunday, and you're going to be there in April, we are doing DSO or private practice. Which way should I go? I think that, as we've talked about on previous podcasts, Bruce, dentists are confused. Would you agree? If you say, hey, what's the deal with DSOs? They're just confused. And my hope is to deconfuse them like we do for our patients. I mean, I feel, please share with me too, what are you seeing in this, should I sell to a DSO or private practice world?
It always comes down to that. It comes down to that individual person. What is it that they want to do? You've got some that just hate the management, hate all that stuff. They tend to lean more towards the DSO route. Although I will tell you, they also tend to think that, well, I just don't like being a leader of the practice. Well, you're going to have to be a leader in that practice if you sell to a DSO. I don't care what you're doing. But as consolidation happens in the marketplace, we're going to see some fantastic group practices that are maybe 2 practices or 3 in a region that have a bunch of dentists that do everything, super practices that are really not private equity driven or corporate driven or anything else. And that's always going to be a part of dentistry. And that's where I've been most of my career, just doing pretty much everything that walks in the door. But yeah, we're seeing definite changes. We're seeing the age of doctors that are selling to a DSO. We're seeing them be younger and younger. And at first I thought that's a crazy idea, but there are some reasons. There are some reasons to take cash off the table if you get the right kind of practice.
I mean, I'll tell you a good story, but I don't want to forget this. So I have this mug here. It says, "Be kind, be bold, be you." And that's from Dr. Maggie Augustin. And I really appreciate this one. And that really is part of our conversation here. Pick the right career treatment plan. We talk to patients. Pick the right treatment plan for your mouth. Pick the right career treatment plan. So here's a story just from last week. I had an implant seminar, a local one, and a dentist said, "Hey, Paul, I just bought a practice at the age of 55 because I sold my previous one to a DSO." And the reason he did that was he was in a partnership. Partners didn't want to buy him out. He didn't want to be in that area anymore geographically. So he sold to a DSO. He stayed on, and then world keeps spinning, Bruce. He moved to a different location, and now he's a private practice owner. So my goal with featuring awesome people like you as a speaker is to provide good information on what's actually happening, not fearful information, not wild information. I mean, I have this shirt. I'll get you one at the event that says biceps and EBITDA here. So I said, you got to work on your biceps and EBITDA. And
yeah, I just work on my biceps.
Yeah. But the other thing is, why should private practices should learn how to make their practices as attractive to sell as possible, even if they don't want to sell them?
That's a perfect point. And when I started Compassionate Finance years ago, it was really funny because everybody asked me the same question. What's your exit strategy? What's your exit strategy? I said, you know what? I don't have an exit strategy. And these guys were like, what? You're not going to just build it and flip it? And I said, no, I want to build a great company, take great care of our customers, take great care of dentists, take great care of patients. We do all that. Guess what? Then maybe a sale will happen someday, but it was never an intention. Make your practice as great as it can possibly be, and then you'll have options. If you don't, you won't. So,
and I love that, Bruce. One of the things I say is that life happens when you're making other treatment plans, and it's true. I mean, there are so many amazing stories that I get from dentists, and then I get flat out awful ones: disability, death, family problems. So you may not be able to do this on your own terms. So my goal on that Sunday, featuring you and brokers and private practice dentists and the rodeo dental guys and all the people that I admire, is to just say, let's share what's happening out there in an authentic and genuine way, so that the next generation, this is who I'm talking to at this event. And you're going to be a speaker. You're talking to a 42-year-old dentist that does $1.8 million a year and sort of saying, what's the next 10 years for me? And one road could be to partner with a corporate group. Another road could be to buy more practices and grow it. And I just think there's way too much judgment out there. Dentists, they're just what is it about dentists, Bruce? I mean, it's people in general, but I will have people say to me, I will never sell to a DSO. They're ruining dentistry. And I go, what's a DSO? They go, I have no idea. Why do you think that happens? Is it insecurity? Is it emotional instability? Is it just not knowing what's out there? I mean, it happens so frequently, and it's not a cool look to be so judgmental about something you don't know.
Well, that's usually the reason they're so judgmental, is because they don't. And I mean, you can look at that through, investing. You go on the different threads on, Facebook and stuff, and people start hammering each other. You don't know. Look, man, I'm learning. I'm just, or they're saying, oh, I'd never do that. I'd never do this. Have you ever done it before? No. Well, then, okay. Well, you have an opinion.
I'm with you. And also, I mean, it's just the human brain. Happy news doesn't get attention, because I say, oh, come to my C event in Philly. They go, is there crime everywhere? I go, there's not crime everywhere, you crazy person. Yes, you should be aware that when you're in a city, to be cognizant of safe practices. But I just think it's also because, and I will fault dental school a little bit for this, Bruce, is that we talk so much about failure in dentistry to a problematic degree, right? Whether it's implants, whether it's a crown, we just too much focus on when things go wrong. You should totally be aware and mitigate risk factors, right? Don't do a crown on a tooth with someone who has rampant decay and eats Jolly Ranchers, but we I think are just not trained to navigate the business world with practicality.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question, as you know, when you're in dental school, I mean, they basically teach you if something fails, it's your fault, which
Yeah.
my margin wasn't, my cavo surface margin wasn't at this angle, so it failed. And they don't even talk about the Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew that they're,
Yeah.
so I mean, a lot of it is ingrained into us, and a lot of it's ingrained in human nature. You probably see that all the time, just doing seminars and having
Yes.
different doctors with different experience come in. And wow, I mean, how much fun is it to take somebody where they don't know anything about a topic and they grow. I always use the saying that when I go to a CE seminar or to any meeting for that matter, when I leave, I'm hopeful that I've learned something that I will never look at it the same way again.
Yes.
I mean, I learned so much about X, Y, Z that I'm just never, then I know I've done something good. I'm not wasting my time, and tell me a little bit more about your seminar that you guys are, I know the one we're doing, but tell us about, you're going to have a couple days ahead of that. You're going to have
so what I'm doing with this one is the first 2 days is bringing one of the best restorative dentists, Dr. Jason Smithson from the UK. I like food, so I describe him as a top chef dentist. And he is going to teach on inlays, onlays, veneers, adhesive dentistry, crowns, the stuff you don't get enough of in dental school. So we have amazing people there for that event. That's Friday, Saturday. If anybody's interested in learning more about it, please go to dentalnachos.com. Please reach out to me directly. People can come for those clinical events. And then on Sunday is going to be the DSO or private practice show, which way to go you go. And you're going to be one of our awesome presenters there. And, my whole thing is, I said this with our good friend, Mark Costas. He said I was going to write this down. And, Mark's such a bright guy. So I'm glad I said something to help you. Cause I said, you know what, Mark, dentistry is a very lonely profession, even though you're surrounded by people. And he said, that is so true. So
it is true.
We are a cave and island profession. And my goal is to bring people together, food, fun, and friends. You've been to these events, and I get inspired by going to other people's events. It's you could leave with a new friend. And one of the things that, I'm 46, and I know you're just like a year or two older than me, Bruce. Like
I think maybe a year,
as you age, there's certain friends that help you with certain things. And I actually will share authentically, it's not healthy to bring your dental problems home to your spouse who's not a dentist. Just isn't. I mean, I don't know. It's not a healthy interchange. And you need people who know what you're going through. I describe this all the time, Bruce, like my amazing wife, Mary, who loves you. I encouraged her to join a new moms group because I said, you want to go and talk to people who are dealing with what you're dealing with. And, now she has moms that she can rely on and chat with about things that don't affect me in the same way. And I think that's what we need more of. So if I can be part of the solution for that for dentistry, because see too many of these CE meetings, they're just like, Mark talks about it too. It's like almost like these walking, can I get my CE credit zombies, who call it. They don't really care about the content. As we talk about, learning happens at the coffee beforehand and the wine after time. So that's my goal, to do that. And, I appreciate your support. And, I share this a lot of times. I know it's stress to make plans to travel. I know it's stress to be there, but dentists are glad they did it after it's over. They always come to me and say, I'm glad I invested in this. And my hope is to encourage them. And you've been a speaker for many years and a participant. And you know what I think is cool too, is I learned from these things as well. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, every time I do a productive dentist program, I became more productive because I just refocused my thoughts and I'd hear people speak, and I'd go hear Mark, and I've been to your programs, and I'm just saying, the dentist who thinks they've learned everything in dental school and just sits around is just so far behind the eight ball day one that, so I'm so excited that you're continuing to do programs. You're not retired. I was on the road. I was on the road for, about 8 to 10 years, doing 80 to 100 days out in what I call the beer and barbecue circuit, where and nobody cares about CE. They're just there to get their ticket punched. and you just get out there. But and nowadays, for the last 20 years plus, it's just been kind of programs that we do on our own. And if you want to come, great. But
I think, Bruce, one of the things I want to share is do both, right? And what I mean by do both is the Productive Dentist Academy with you and Victoria sponsored me during the pandemic, and you met Maggie Augustin, right? So she wouldn't have met you without my online world.
Absolutely.
And she took that online awareness and turned it into in-person actions. So I want to make sure that everyone understands I believe that online learning is awesome and just translate it into in-person action. Do both, because you cannot replicate on Zoom the human connections you make being at these events. And we just need more of that in a profession that, dentistry has a lot of problems, right? Insurance is paying us less. Dental school debt's affecting dental students. I actually think that, someone posted a thread on my friend Bob D's group, Dentistry in General, is like, hey, I was going to post this anonymously, but I just want to share, I'm pretty tired of being a practice owner and I kind of want to quit. And you know what most people said? I understand where you're coming from. I feel that way too. And they didn't tell the person to quit, but I just thought that was such a cool exchange, of sometimes us as practice owners, we feel we can't be vulnerable and authentic and say, you know what, this is pretty tough. Because someone goes, oh, but don't you have a nice car? I go, maybe you have a nice car and it's tough to run this thing. So I know that's what you guys do. And I just want to kind of continue that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Everybody looks at, dentistry is hard. And I touch one of my first things, in fact, the first thing I speak at PDA when we have our meetings is how to reduce stress. Because you can't be productive when you're stressed out. And believe me, I've been stressed out for many years, and just how do I reduce stress? How do I come to work with a smile on my face and not a frowny face? And how do I, and I'm always going to be in character with patients. I'm always in character. I'm always going to be, that person. But as soon as I walk out of that room, for many years, I was so stressed out. Don't ask me a question. I'm just like, leave me alone, or whatever.
And that can affect your life with your team and your life at home. If I can share one story that made me think of you. So last night on my drive home from the office, a young dentist who did my boost camp called me up and said, Paul, I might need to hire an associate. I'm doing, $100,000 a month. And, I took over the practice 2 years ago, but I want to let you know, Paul, I'm doing 4.5 days a week of dentistry and I'm doing all the stuff outside the operatory and I'm just burnt out. And he goes, I want to know if I should hire an associate. I said, why don't you explore a 2-day-a-week one, right? Why don't you explore someone helping you 2 days a week? And he goes, how do I know if I can afford it? I said, guess what? You don't know. You don't know until you test it. Why not create a 2-day-a-week position for an associate dentist, 100 days a year, guarantee $750 a day, $75,000, Bruce. See how that year goes. You know what he said? That sounds like a great plan. And because at the end of that year, Bruce, he's either going to say, this went really great. I want the associate to do day 3 and 4. Or he might say, hey, this wasn't for me. But it's poignant to me that, we can talk about this for a minute. They say that practice ownership gives you a lot of freedom, but in many ways, I totally disagree.
Oh,
you can't take off when you want to. You can't just leave and go to your child play. Maybe people should listen to people like us for a minute. There's many times I felt very not free owning a dental practice. Have you felt that way?
Oh, hell yeah. For sure. It's, I was able to carve out stuff when I needed to for kids programs and stuff. But I will tell you, being a practice owner is tough and it is very restricting. 99% of dentists who own their own practice, and I can say this across the board, have never taken more than 1 week off in a row. And, I built a system to where my last 20 years, I could take 3 or 4 weeks off because it's all about planning. It's all about doing that and making sure that your people are taken care of when you're not there. And so usually that's in a kind of a group setting with a couple of associates or whatever. But it also has to do with your productivity. Sometimes I would stack my productivity for a couple of weeks so that I could take a couple of weeks.
You and I enjoy a glass of wine, right, Bruce? So here what I'll share is when you're a dentist, you have to serve everything at your restaurant, right? So you can't just say, I'm only going to serve a 7-course tasting meal. So if somebody wants to sit at a bar and have a glass of wine, and I'll use that as a filling, right? Sure. You have to do it. So my good friend, Dr. Todd, he proudly showed at his last boost camp speaking. He goes, look at this text I got. He was on a beach in Jamaica And one of his closest patients, but also I think one of the most frustrating, said, "Hey, Todd, I just left your office and your associate was awesome." And guess what
Oh,
that
God.
associate did, Bruce? Ready? One hygiene check, right? So
That's
these
right.
patients are so obsessed sometimes with their solo GP owner that
Oh,
it was
yeah.
an enormous deal for Todd's patient to have his teeth examined. He didn't say full mouth extraction. He didn't say 8 crowns. Todd said, "Oh, I'm so proud. I'm glad you told me what happened. Oh, it's one hygiene check." So it just shows you how stressful it can be. And I believe that most dentists, I know I run Dentist Job Connect, so I don't want to sound too self-interested, should look to hire help as dentist help sooner than they think they need it.
I couldn't agree more. And I will tell you that I'm really impressed with the Dentist Job Connect.
Nice.
Not only, I mean, I'm online quite a bit, looking at talking to docs and all that stuff, but I just see so many cool opportunities that doctors are taking advantage of by using you guys and bringing in great associates. I just read one today that had just gone into a doc's office, and I was like, that's what I like seeing, because where do you find them? Gosh, it's kind of a crapshoot. And you and I talked about this several months ago. It's nice to have somebody at least do some screening, at least do, this person has shown an interest in X, Y, and Z. And so I think doing that is awesome. And I think you had said something about the working interview, and what is that like? It's hard to get to know somebody, in that working.
Well, someone just posted, well, first, Maggie has an amazing story. We found her an associate and she did a blog. So you know what? It's amazing. I think you and I are the same way. Dentists want the answer to the test that doesn't have the answers. And what I'll share is a dentist just said, "Hey, Paul, I know you don't like clinical working interviews, but how am I going to be able to determine if my associate's going to be an excellent clinician, good with my patients and good with my team?" I said, "Easy answer. Can't determine it. You got to hire them and see."
Yeah.
And one day's no test. So in general, you have to have, I say, hire, onboard, train, have them start seeing patients and constantly be monitoring. And
100%.
Some of these dentists, and it's their fault, they go, "My friend told me he hired an associate and he had to redo all the work they did for a year." You know what I have to say is, who was watching this work for the first month?
I know.
Like who? So I think it's because, if you want my honest opinion on this, I think that dentists don't love conflict. And I think that if you're a practice owner and you have an associate, manage them as conflict. Hey, this isn't how we do things. And I don't think they are comfortable with conflict. And, it's wild to me. They go, I mean, I hire people daily, Job Connect, Nachos, all that stuff. They go, I never know if they're going to be really good before they start.
No.
Gotta hire, onboard, train, monitor, see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I'm 100% with you. One of the things, and one of the things that I've always thought is, get a doc in there, and some dentists just have an arrogance about them sometimes. And when I see that arrogance, I run. I know what I'm doing or whatever. But you'll get to know pretty quickly, within a few months, in working with somebody, is this the kind of person that takes criticism, or is this the person that takes advice? I looked at it when I was teaching at Baylor. I love my students, and it was kind of like, oh, wow. And so I had an associate, and I'd go in and say, "Hey, mind if I look over your shoulder?" And just, "Oh man, that's awesome. Good job." They need that. They're out of dental school. They did 2 crowns, or they did 2 root canals, and they need your feedback. And if they are so arrogant that they think they already know everything, then pretty soon you can invite them.
It's not, and that's why what I'll share is we help dentists out of dental school find jobs, Bruce, and GPRs and AGDs. But the dental education has changed over the years. So one of the things that the GPR and AG does is it does give them more clinical reps most of the time. There are some great schools, Midwestern, but when I talk to practice owners and they say, "Oh, well, if someone does 27 crowns, is it better if they've done than someone's done 12? I say, not necessarily, but the person who's done a residency is used to that feedback you talk to, because you cannot get through a GPR AGD unless you understand how to take feedback. And when you go into practice with your associate, if you have not been receptive to feedback, and you see this with sometimes very high maintenance wide receivers on a football team. Remember the guy who took off, Antonio Brown, took off his jersey and left. Bruce Arians tried to give him feedback. And
right in the middle of it.
Yeah. And that is what I would tell practice owners and new dentists, is that being able to accept feedback on what you're doing is the key to growth. And, dental school is wild. You're always being told what's wrong, right? It's easy to develop a hard shell. You get a lot of different voices, and I feel for new dentists. And, and then tell me for a minute, I don't want to keep you too long, but your productive dentist clients who, let's just use an example. Someone's a solo practice owner, they're doing $2 million a year, and they want to bring in an associate. What are some of the challenges that they face to that? Even, finding the person, training them, getting them to be like them. I just interviewed a guy who does $3 million. He's like a Bruce Baird, $3 million a year, one solo dentist with 4 hygienists, right? So he's burnt out. He needs an associate. And he said, I'm a super GP, but I don't expect my associate to be a super GP. I expect them to do it. How do your clients handle that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you have to be at saturation. In other words, or you're totally done as far as the thought process. But it's like, I know that I can ramp up my marketing. I can bring an associate in. Associates, I bring them in to lighten the load for me. Yes, it may adjust your take home for a little bit. That's okay. I don't mind that. I'm well aware of that. But it also allows me to shift my marketing so that I'm able to do procedures that I specifically want to do. And the associate, it's kind of like Jeff Boosky, my partner. Jeff's a phenomenal implant guy now. But when he started with me 18 years ago, he didn't do implants. He was trained in a ton of stuff. But you just bring them along. That's how you transition. Is you can't walk away. Well, some people do, but it's hard to walk away from a practice without it imploding. If you've been the lead authority in that practice or the cultural North Star of that practice. So you have to build these associates to become that person, and they want to be like you. I mean, they do. And so what happens is they'll follow. And so I think
you're sharing such great value. I want to so we watched that TV show, The Bear. The guy won the award for it. I don't know if you saw it. It was about the chef in Chicago. I've worked in the restaurant industry for over 10 years, when I was younger. The thing that they do right is the top chef doesn't make the grilled cheese, right? So if during a dinner session, the top chef's making all the best dinners and there's a kid who needs a grilled cheese, well, they got a different chef who does grilled cheeses. And then one day the grilled cheese chef becomes the top chef. But when you're a super solo GP, you're making grilled cheeses from paellas to this. And I actually believe that that's just too much stress on one person's mind to shift gears like that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But I tell you, I really appreciate you being on with me today with the Productive Dentist Podcast. Thanks, everybody that voted us #1 podcast in dentistry this past year. So but it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Paul.
Thanks, Bruce.
I can't wait to see you in about 5 weeks.
Yeah, can't wait to see you. You're going to be awesome. We'll have fun in Philadelphia. Anybody who wants to find out more about it, just go to dentalnachos.com. Would love to have some of your followers and high or low five them in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. But thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe. Pass it along to a friend. Give us a like on iTunes and Spotify, or drop me an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. Don't forget to check out other podcasts from the Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentistpodcast.com. Join me again next week for another episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.